Stop scrolling right now, because what you are about to hear is the moment royal watchers across 2 continents have been waiting almost 6 years to see, and it just happened in the past 48 hours. King Charles, the cancer-stricken monarch who has spent his entire reign trying to play peacemaker, has finally slammed the door in the faces of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. No more invitations. No more olive branches. No more pretending the family is one big happy unit. The Sandringham invitation is dead, and the reason why is going to leave your jaw on the floor. Picture this for a second. The cold stone walls of Buckingham Palace. The king at his desk in the early morning light, a stack of newspapers piled in front of him, each one carrying a fresh humiliation served up by his own son. Australia, Ukraine, Washington, the internet. Page after page of attacks on a man who is currently undergoing brutal cancer treatment. And then the moment of decision. The moment Charles, perhaps for the first time in his entire reign, looks up and says, "Enough." Stay close, because by the end of the next several minutes, you will understand exactly why this withdrawal of the Sandringham invitation is the single most important royal news story of the year, and why it sets the stage for an absolutely explosive state visit to America next week. You will not get this analysis anywhere else. Understand something before going any further. This is not a small story. This is not a polite little royal squabble. This is the largest, most consequential family rupture inside the House of Windsor since the abdication crisis of 1936. And the man pulling the trigger this time is not a brash young royal in love with an American divorcee. The man pulling the trigger is the king himself, a father, a grandfather, a monarch in the twilight of his reign, refusing, finally, to keep playing a game that was destroying him from the inside out. So buckle in. Every single layer of this story is about to be peeled back. Well-placed royal sources are now reporting that the monarch has formally withdrawn his invitation for Harry and Meghan to come to Sandringham over the summer. And the reason being whispered through the corridors is jaw-dropping in its directness. The withdrawal is a response to what insiders are now openly calling the Australia Trauma Tour. Yes, the disastrous, vanity-driven, pseudo-royal tour of Australia, the one that played out across television screens like a public relations train wreck, has finally pushed King Charles past his breaking point. Now think for a moment about why this matters so much. For months on end, the courtiers around Charles have been quietly briefing the British press with the same soothing line. "Oh no," they kept saying, "we are not going to punish them. We do not want to upset them. The titles are not going to be touched. Their place in the line of succession is not going to be removed. We must keep the door open," they would say. "We must keep the family together," they would say. And every single time those statements appeared in print, you could practically hear royal historians shaking their heads from London to New York. No, you have got to do something. Because this is getting worse, not better. They are not learning, they are not softening, they are not coming home. They are embarrassing the king in Ukraine. They are embarrassing the king in Washington. They are embarrassing the king on the internet. They are embarrassing the king on every single continent they touch. And while the rest of the royal family is actually coming through this whole turbulent series of events looking remarkably strong, with Prince William rising into his future role with confidence and Princess Catherine emerging as the modern queen the country needs, Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as the constant, festering thorn in the side of the institution. If the king does not finally listen to William, who has reportedly been pleading with his father privately for years to take stronger action, this thorn will keep digging deeper. So, here is why this is significant news. Pure and simple. The king has finally listened, and the receipts on this story are rock solid. A close friend of the king, speaking to royal correspondents in confidence, has revealed something brutal. The line is so sharp it deserves to be read twice. The friend is reported to have said, Charles will not invite them, especially not after their trip to Australia. And then the line that should make every Sussex sympathizer sit up. Harry, who likes to speak about anti-bullying, is seen as a bully inside the palace. Read that again. The man who has built an entire post-royal career on the rhetoric of anti-bullying, on the supposed gentle cultivation of mental health, on the soft, vulnerable side of modern masculinity, is privately viewed by the people who actually know him as a bully. A man who, when he does not get exactly what he wants, stamps his foot like a child. A man who not only does the thing he was always going to do, but then, and this is the cruelest part, tries to emotionally blackmail his own father with his own children, Archie and Lilibet. Pause on that for a moment. Imagine being in your 70s. Imagine fighting an aggressive form of cancer. Imagine wanting nothing more in this life than to hold your grandchildren before the disease takes you. And imagine your son using those grandchildren as a bargaining chip. That is the picture being painted by the king's closest confidants. That is the man Harry has become. But here is where it gets even more revealing. The same source also revealed that the invitation was already on shaky ground long before Australia. It was already, in their words, ill-advised, especially after the chairwoman of Centibale, Sophie Shandaka, sued Harry for defamation. Yes, defamation. The man who claims to be the world's protector of African children was sued by the very chairwoman of his own charity, a charity established in the name of his own mother. The trip to Australia was, as the source bluntly put it, the straw that broke the camel's back. The source ends with the most damning prediction of all. It would, they say, indeed make the king look very weak if he did have them at Sandringham this summer. And then, in a line that has set tongues wagging across both London and Montecito, the source adds, "Harry and Meghan will come, but it will not be at the king's invitation. We shall see." Translate that for yourself. The Sussexes are going to attempt to crash the holiday. They are going to manufacture some kind of pretext, some kind of media spectacle to force their way into the royal narrative this summer, and the palace is bracing for it. Now consider the so-called invitation itself, because it was never really an invitation in the first place. Harry, in his usual fashion, went to the media and dropped vague hints. "We would entertain an invitation," he said. "It would be lovely for our family to meet the king," he said. Soft, leading language designed to manufacture pressure on a sick parent. And why does he want it so badly? Because if you are formally invited by the sitting monarch to a royal residence, you automatically receive state-funded security, which, conveniently, is the only thing Harry actually cares about right now, because his own funds, the inheritance from Princess Diana, are reportedly almost gone. He does not want to spend a single dollar of his own protecting his family. He wants the British taxpayer to do it. And then the cherry on top, Harry made the entire request conditional. He said it would depend on who else was there, code for William and Catherine. As if a man who walked away from the institution gets to dictate the guest list of the head of state. It was, in plain language, blatant emotional blackmail directed straight at the king. To the palace's credit, they did push back. They issued a statement strongly worded by royal standards, saying the king would love to meet his grandchildren. Charles, after all, has only ever met Lilibet for what insiders describe as a hot second, Archie, possibly twice in his entire life. The grief of that, for a grandfather staring down terminal illness, is unimaginable. But after Australia, no can do. And the reason cuts straight to the bone of why this could never have worked. Imagine for a second what would happen if Meghan showed up at Sandringham wearing a beautiful dress. Within 24 hours, that exact dress would appear on a shopping website. What to wear to meet the in-laws, what to wear to a palace, what to wear when hanging out with your dreaded stepmother. It is insane. It is tacky. It cannot happen. The Sussexes have monetized every single human moment of their lives. The idea of letting them inside one of the most sacred royal residences during the most spiritually important season of the king's calendar, and watching that experience be turned into a shopping list within a single news cycle is genuinely too much for the institution to bear. And here is the deeper truth at the heart of this entire scandal. Harry and Meghan have, at this exact moment in time, zero cash. Not in the United States, not in the United Kingdom. not anywhere on this planet. Their brand has collapsed, their commercial deals are stalling, their public approval has cratered. And in order to claw any of that influence back, they desperately need a fresh dusting of royal shine. They need to rub themselves all over with a little royal magic and let the world know they are once again on the inside. A Sandringham invitation would have provided exactly that, pure, undiluted royal shine. And Charles finally has refused to give it to them. Because, and this is the most chilling question of all, what happens the next time the palace inevitably upsets Harry and Meghan? Because that day is coming. It always comes. Do they go on CBS again? Do they sit down for another interview with a famous American host? Do they grant another Oprah-style spectacle? Does Harry, the man who has already published Spare, come out with another tell-all book? Does Meghan? It is way too dangerous, way too ridiculous. After the trauma closet shopping website, after the disgusting pivot of selling the clothes worn during their most intimate royal moments for cash, the king has finally seen what most royal watchers saw years ago. There is no negotiation with people like this. There is only damage control. But hold on, because this is where the story gets even spicier. Harry has already failed the test for the upcoming American state visit. Of course, if Harry and Meghan had any sense, and we already know they do not, they would simply shut their mouths for 4 days. Just 4 days. 4 days of silence, 4 days of dignity. 4 days of allowing the king to do his job in peace. Surely, even they could manage that. Surely, but they could not. They simply could not. Because Harry's visit to Ukraine and his shocking attack on Donald Trump and the entire American administration came literally, and this is verifiable on every news network, 4 days before King Charles is set to touch down in Washington. That is the ultimate slight a son can deliver to his father. It is proof, hard and undeniable, that this man is genuinely sick in the head when it comes to his own father. Because in public, Harry will quite happily perform the worried son routine. Remember last year, after their meeting, he said, "Oh, I am just so worried about him, I need to spend my time." Remember the awful BBC interview where he basically said he was scared his father might die before they could reconcile? That whole performance was about him, his feelings, his drama, his pain. But then, when it comes to a trip like the upcoming American state visit, a trip that is already incredibly stressful for a man undergoing cancer treatment, a trip for which Charles is reportedly having to pause his treatment in order to travel, Harry chose this exact moment to hijack the news cycle with a politically incendiary speech in Ukraine. Look at the itinerary the king is facing. 2 days in Washington, travel to New York, a massive day in New York, then a final day in Virginia, and after all that, a solo trip to Bermuda without Camilla. This is a punishing schedule for a healthy man. For a king with cancer, it is borderline reckless. The one thing, the only thing Charles did not need was added stress caused by his youngest son. And this is precisely the point William keeps making privately, behind palace walls. Stress has a documented, medically proven role in how a person's body handles cancer. Stress is the silent enemy. Every spike of cortisol weakens the system. Every sleepless night makes the treatment harder to bear. And Harry, again and again and again, brings stress. Imagine the scene. Charles probably at Balmoral preparing for his journey, opening his morning briefing and reading. Harry has gone to Ukraine. Oh God, why? Why now? And then being handed the speech itself, a speech which veteran royal commentators have reported was at least partly written by artificial intelligence, attacking Donald Trump just days before Charles meets him face to face. That is stress. That is direct, calculated stress placed on the shoulders of a sick king by his own son. That is the picture of someone who actually does not give a damn about his father. And here is a question worth sitting with. Would Harry have even gone to Ukraine if Australia had gone better? It is a fascinating thought experiment. The Australia trip was, by any honest measure, a disaster. The polls afterward were horrific. The post-Australia approval numbers cratered. And Harry, being the deeply self-centered creature that he is, simply needed to be back in the public eye. He needed to redirect the narrative. He needed eyeballs. And Ukraine, the world's most photographed conflict zone, gave him exactly that. The one thing the king and his courtiers have always told Harry is, stop talking to the press. Stop manufacturing media moments. Just stop. But Harry cannot stop. Daddy will not pick up the phone, so he calls the Times, or the Telegraph, or whatever American outlet will take his call this week. And it is the same playbook he used to manufacture the Sandringham invitation. He went public, the palace pushed back, they told him, again, stop going to the press. Because they see the tactic for exactly what it is. It is a bullying tactic. And here is the supreme irony. The irony that has powered the very best royal reporting for years now. For all of Harry and Meghan's chit-chat about bullying, about anti-bullying campaigns, about how they were bullied by the institution in the press, every single former staff member who has ever worked for them tells the same private story. They are the bullies. They are the ones who terrorize their employees. They are the ones whose offices have a higher staff turnover than a fast food restaurant. Talk to anyone who has ever worked for them. The pattern is identical. The death stare in public. The full evisceration in private. This brings us to a moment recently captured on camera that absolutely refuses to leave the public consciousness. It involved a small, easily missed exchange between Meghan and Sarah Fosmo, Prince Harry's chief of staff. In a public clip, Meghan delivered what can only be described as the death stare. A flash of cold, controlled fury directed at her own employee. To the casual viewer, it looked like nothing. A passing expression. But to anyone who has actually worked for Harry and Meghan, that look is everything. That look is the warning shot before the private dressing down. That look is the prelude to having strips torn off you in a closed room. Veteran royal reporting has revealed that the clip actually triggered something close to post-traumatic stress in former Sussex staff members. Imagine that. Former employees describe Meghan, on the record, as a workplace psychopath. Their words, the tag is genuinely shocking. A workplace psychopath who smiles at the public on one side of her face while glowering at her staff on the secret side. The woman, according to those who have worked under her, treats every single person she has any kind of power over as totally disposable, like a tradesman called in to fix the toilet. And here is the irony, so sharp, it could cut glass. Even a tradesman fixing your toilet, you treat with basic kindness, because you actually need that toilet to work. Meghan somehow has never learned that fundamental rule of life. If you want things to function, if you want the people around you to perform, you have to treat them well. There is a piece of dating advice that captures this perfectly. Never date a man who is mean to the waiters, because that is exactly how he is going to end up treating you. Hold that wisdom up against Harry and Meghan, and the entire arc of their relationship makes perfect, terrible sense. And the Sarah Fosmo situation is not an isolated incident. It is part of a pattern stretching back nearly a decade. Think about it. Samantha Cohen, Sarah Latham, Catherine Quinn, Christian Jones. The list of senior staff who have walked away from the Sussex household reads like a directory of former diplomatic talent. Person after person, hired with great fanfare, then quietly leaving within a year, sometimes within months. Some left in tears, some left through gritted teeth. Some left under non-disclosure agreements that may never be fully lifted, and the common thread, told off the record by every single one of them, is the same single word: toxic. Now ask yourself, when every house guest leaves complaining about the smell, the problem is not the guests, the problem is the house. Tick-tock, Sarah Fosmo will not escape unscathed. The clock is also ticking on how long she will continue to work in that household. But hey, Harry, this is the bed you have made. How does it feel to lie in it? Comfortable? Probably not. Now, let us turn to a piece of investigative reporting that has detonated like a bomb in royal circles this very week. A respected American magazine editor by the name of Dan Wakeford has spent 3 full weeks investigating Harry and Meghan from the inside. 3 weeks of conversations with people inside their world, trying to understand the career crisis, the much speculated about financial issues, And what, if anything, can be done to fix them? And the report he has just released is genuinely jaw-dropping. The context matters, because Dan Wakeford was once one of the architects of the polished Sussex narrative. He was the editor of People magazine during the famous cover where Meghan's so-called friends supposedly revealed the truth about her, which of course was not the actual truth at all, because the entire pitch of the article was that she was a really lovely woman, victimized by everyone. He also published the leaked letter Meghan sent to her father, and then, after moving to US Weekly, Wakeford tried to turn that magazine into the propaganda sheet for Harry and Meghan, mimicking what people had been doing. It did not work. The ratings dropped. The readers walked away, and in a story that broke just this week, US Weekly has now announced they are slashing 50% of their staff and closing their office. 50%, half the staff gone. Now, to be fair, print magazines are dying everywhere. Mainstream media is collapsing globally, so the entire downsizing cannot be pinned on Sussex content alone. But the public clearly rejected the idea of US Weekly as the new People magazine, pushing the Sussex narrative. Wakeford has now gone independent. And here is the beautiful thing about independent journalism. When mainstream figures finally cut ties with the corporate machine, they suddenly become free to tell the truth. And the 3-week deep dive into the Sussex marriage, finances, and career trajectory is jaw-dropping in its honesty. Look at what was found. The finances are not what the headlines tell you. The supposedly $100 million Netflix deal? Never $100 million. The supposedly $20 million Spotify deal? Never $20 million. The inheritance Princess Diana left for Harry, the famous nest egg, is mostly gone. Their outgoings are huge. Security bills, multiple mortgages, and legal fees estimated at $38 million. $38 million in legal fees. Just sit with that number. That is what Harry's litigation crusade has actually cost him. The television projects? Also, not what the press releases say. The scripted polo drama, sources say, will likely never see the light of day. The production model is broken. Industry insiders say the Sussex name now actively detracts from a project rather than selling it. Other sources dispute this, but the trend is clear. They are toxic to producers, toxic to investors, toxic to executives. Then there is the personal side, and this is where the reporting gets genuinely chilling. They have had massive staff cuts. They are now, in the words of multiple sources, 2 people who are wildly unhappy. 2 people with goals that have quietly diverged in ways that may be impossible to reconcile. Read that line again. Goals that have diverged in ways that may be impossible to reconcile. 5 separate sources inside their world contributed to this report, and the conclusion from every single one of them is the same. There is one move left, one play, one desperate strategy that could save them. But every instinct they have will resist making it. The move is to disappear, to genuinely vanish from the public eye for a sustained period of time, to let the noise die down. And then, only then, attempt a quiet relaunch. But of course, they will never do that, because attention is the oxygen they breathe. There is something deeply ironic about watching the corporate media slowly, painfully arrive at a conclusion that independent royal journalism reached almost 2 years ago. Multiple investigative reporters across the United Kingdom and the United States wrote it. The independent journalists have been ahead of the mainstream by a country mile. And what stings about this latest revelation is the question of whether it represents a genuine return to honest reporting or simply a savvy commercial pivot now that the wind has changed direction. The honest answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Take Charlotte Griffiths, the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. She had to fight her way through a court case with Prince Harry. And when the Facebook messages dropped, proving she had been right all along, that there had clearly been a relationship, an intimate relationship, as some might say, suddenly people believed her, not him. And she has been more willing to speak openly ever since. So part of the analysis says, look, the more people who arrive at the truth, the better. But the other part, the part deeply familiar with how access journalism works, says something different. Access journalism is a poison. Access journalism means you literally just pick up the phone, swallow whatever the celebrity tells you, and print it. And in the process, you trample over the journalists who have actually risked their careers reporting the truth from the start. For the last 8 years, the truth has been there in plain sight. The Sussexes have denied stories, time and time again. And then, suddenly, the truth comes out, and the early reporters are vindicated, often without acknowledgement. Take a perfect example from this very week. Hugo Vickers, a brilliant royal historian and a close confidant of the late Queen Elizabeth II, has just released a book in which he reveals that the Queen herself was worried that Harry and Meghan were wearing wires during family conversations. Wearing wires, as in secretly recording her, as in possibly trying to set her up for a future media moment. Royal correspondents reported that exact same fact back in 2020. At the time, those reporters were called conspiracy theorists. They were called unhinged. They were told they were making it up. Even though the information was incredibly well sourced from inside the royal family. Even though, and this is the part that always astonishes, there were actual photographs showing Harry and Meghan being wired up at events, pictorial evidence, and still those early reporters were dismissed. Now Hugo Vickers prints it in a hardcover book and suddenly everyone nods knowingly. But here is the critical point. The more people who move toward the truth, the better. Because what this week has demonstrated, undeniably, is that Harry and Meghan's allies in the American mainstream media have been reduced to almost nothing. Just 2 outlets remain in the corner. People Magazine, Town and Country, that is essentially it. Plus Vanity Fair, where Sussex contacts have been calling a specific person on a regular basis, and Town and Country, where they have a cozy line into. There are also a handful of suspicious Instagram accounts cropping up, like Royal Style Watch and others, pumping out aggressively pro-Sussex content. These accounts deserve scrutiny. They appear almost overnight with polished branding and uniformly positive Sussex coverage. Coincidence? Unlikely. And that currency of trust, the trust between an honest reporter and a thoughtful audience, is more valuable today than it has ever been before. Because the corporate media is collapsing in slow motion right in front of our eyes. The traditional gatekeepers are losing their hold. Magazines are folding. Newspapers are shrinking. Cable news is bleeding viewers by the millions. And in that vacuum, in that brand new media landscape, the people who win, the only people who win, are the ones who stayed honest when everyone else was selling propaganda. The Sussex machine has spent so much time, so much money, and so much legal firepower trying to silence honest reporting precisely because honest reporting is the threat they cannot manufacture a press release to defeat. Now turn to one of the most undercovered royal stories of the entire week. King Charles's address to the nation, recorded in the library at Balmoral. It was a moment that deserved far more attention than it received. The silence around it from major news organizations was deafening, and the address itself was a king openly hitting back at his critics. The voices saying he should consider abdication, given the Andrew scandal and his own deteriorating health. You can see in the pre-recorded video, filmed in that beautiful Balmoral library, just how much his health has suffered. The drawn face, the slight tremor in his voice. And yet this address was Charles saying with full force, "Hell no, I am not abdicating. I sign up to my mother's approach. There will be no abdication, period." And there is something to genuinely respect about the boldness of the position, even if you disagree with it. Listen to his actual words. He said, "Much about the times we now live in, I suspect may have troubled her deeply, but I take heart from her belief that goodness will always prevail and that a brighter dawn is never far from the horizon. In this, I renew my own solemn pledge of duty and service to you all. God bless you, darling mama. You remain forever in our hearts and prayers." This is only the 3rd time, outside of his Christmas messages, that Charles has delivered a broadcast of this nature. The first was just 2 days after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. So this is a moment of enormous historical weight, and the message was crystal clear. I am not abdicating. I refuse to abdicate. The deeper question, however, lingers. What would be truly compelling is if Charles became a stronger king and did as his mother did, which is always protect the crown. And by protecting the crown, sometimes you have to trim the fat. Look to the example of the Queen of Denmark, who one day simply woke up and announced that nobody in the family would hold royal titles anymore, except for her oldest son and his children. It came as a shock to the rest of the family, but she said, "Look, this will make your lives better. Trust me." The kids' noses were out of joint for a hot minute, but they are family. They came back together, and now Denmark is a model of monarchical sustainability. That is what King Charles needs to do. Just bite the bullet, trim the fat, slim the institution, make the hard call now while he still has the strength to make it. Because if he leaves the problem on William's desk, William will inherit not just a crown, but a public relations nightmare wearing the surname Sussex. The problem, of course, is that it is genuinely difficult to commit yourself to such a massive structural overhaul when you are simultaneously undergoing utterly brutal cancer treatment on a weekly basis. Sympathy for him is real. He is up for it. Look at the man. He has gone through brutal treatment. He is having a horrible time with cancer. And he has still been the most active king modern Britain has seen in years. Show me another monarch in modern history who has worked this hard while this sick. You cannot. And the world is going to see all of that on full display next week. The state visit to America, 2 days in Washington, a massive day in New York, a final day in Virginia. Then off to Bermuda, alone, without Camilla. Every meeting will be scrutinized, every handshake, every glance, every word. And against the backdrop of Harry's Ukraine speech, his attack on the Trump administration, his efforts to overshadow his own father at the most important diplomatic moment of the entire reign, this state visit becomes more than a tour. It becomes a referendum on whether King Charles can hold the line. Picture the optics for a second. The 77-year-old monarch, hair thin by treatment, eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 difficult conversations, stepping down the staircase of a British military aircraft onto American soil. Cameras flashing, honor guards saluting, the President of the United States waiting just beyond the red carpet, and in the back of every photograph, the ghostly presence of a younger son 3,000 miles away doing his very best to upstage the moment. That is the visual we will all see. That is the story being written in real time. Behind every public smile this week, the king is fighting battles on multiple fronts. The Andrew situation continues to bleed quietly into the headlines, with new revelations expected from civil filings later this year. The William and Kate succession question hovers in the background, with both reportedly being briefed for an accelerated transition timeline if the king's health deteriorates further. The Commonwealth realms are watching, especially in the Caribbean, where Republican movements are testing the waters of a post-Charles era. And of course, the Sussexes, ever opportunistic, are positioned to exploit any weakness for personal commercial gain. It is a 1,000-year-old institution navigating a moment of unique and concentrated stress. Charles is, in many ways, the seawall holding back several different storms at once, and a seawall eventually gets tired. The withdrawal of the Sandringham invitation is therefore not just a piece of palace gossip. It is the king choosing, finally, to stop spending energy on the storm he can do nothing about and concentrate it instead on the storms he can actually manage. It is triage. It is realism. It is, in its quiet way, the most decisive act of his reign so far. And the message it sends to Harry could not be clearer. The door that has been propped open for years, however reluctantly, is now closed. Not because the king does not love his son. The king almost certainly still does, in that complicated way that fathers love children who break their hearts. But because the king has finally accepted what every honest royal observer has known for years, there is no productive negotiation with Harry and Meghan. Every olive branch becomes a press release. Every act of grace becomes a marketing opportunity. Every quiet kindness becomes raw material for the next interview, the next book, the next product launch. The Sussex empire is crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. They wanted privacy, then they sold their privacy. They wanted independence, then they begged for state-funded security. They wanted to escape royal life, then they spent every waking moment trying to remain royal. They wanted to define themselves outside the institution, yet every single commercial venture they touch leans on the Duchess title or the Prince title for credibility. The architecture of their lives is a contradiction so fundamental that it could not possibly hold up over time, and it is now finally collapsing in on itself. Which brings us back to the present moment, the breath before the state visit, the calm that always sits just before the storm of an enormous diplomatic engagement. The king has said no to Sandringham. He has said no to abdication. He has said yes to a punishing American itinerary. He has said yes to renewing his pledge of service. The man is, in every visible way, choosing to spend the remaining time of his reign defending the institution rather than placating its dissenters. That is the choice of a sovereign. That is the choice of a king. And history, when it eventually writes this chapter, will likely judge him kindly for it. Meghan and Harry, meanwhile, are running out of room, out of money in the practical sense, out of credibility in the cultural sense, out of allies in the journalistic sense, out of patience from the institution they once tried to extort for their own gain, and out of options for any kind of meaningful return to the center of public life. The ladders are being kicked away one by one. The bridges are being burned faster than they can be rebuilt, and the public, the most fickle audience in the world, is moving on. Imagine it from their side for a moment. Sitting in a sun-drenched mansion in Montecito, watching the American media slowly turn cold, watching the production deals dry up, watching the staff resign in waves, watching the marriage strain under the impossible weight of two competing visions of the future, watching the children grow up in a strange limbo between American privacy and British royal status, and now watching the door at Sandringham close with a final, definitive click. What do they do next? That is the question that will define the next chapter of this saga. There are only a few real options. They can take the advice that even their friendliest allies have been quietly giving them and disappear for a year or two, genuinely vanish, reset the entire narrative, come back eventually with a different story to tell. But this requires humility, patience, the willingness to sit in obscurity. None of these are qualities the Sussexes have ever displayed. Or they can double down. They can pursue another major media moment, another interview, another book, another documentary. They can scorch what remains of their bridges in a final act of public confrontation. But every previous attempt at this strategy has produced diminishing returns. The Oprah moment was their peak, Spare was a step down, the Netflix series was a step down again, American Riviera Orchard barely registered. Each subsequent attempt at attention has generated less heat than the last. Going back to that well, again, may produce nothing but echoes. Or, and this is the option nobody discusses in polite royal circles, they can quietly fracture. The reporting from inside their world has now made it explicit. Two people wildly unhappy. Goals impossible to reconcile. That is not the language of a couple in love facing the world together. That is the language of a couple in slow motion separation. If that is where this story is heading, then everything we are watching now is simply the public version of a private collapse. The state visit, the Ukraine speech, the Australia tour, the trauma closet, the legal fees. All of it could be the surface manifestations of something far more intimate and far more painful happening beneath the polished public veneer. And the institution, the 1,000-year-old institution, will absorb whatever happens. It always does. It has survived plagues and revolutions and abdications and divorces and scandals across centuries. It will survive this too. The question is not whether the monarchy survives. The question is what shape it takes on the other side of this storm. A leaner monarchy, a more focused monarchy. A monarchy that has finally learned that sentiment is not the same as strategy and that family loyalty has limits when the institution itself is at stake. The next 48 hours will be electric. The king will leave for America, the cameras will follow every step, the world will watch. And in the back of every frame, the ghost of a younger son, 3,000 miles away, will be visible to anyone paying attention. The story is approaching its climax. The chapters are being written faster than anyone can read them. And the final shape of the British royal family for the next 20 years is being decided right now, in real time, by a sick king finally finding his strength. Because the king has finally said no, the Sandringham door is closed, the state visit is about to begin, the Sussex brand is collapsing in real time. The finances are in worse shape than the press releases ever admitted. The marriage, according to insiders, is reaching a breaking point. The American media allies are evaporating one by one. And next week, when King Charles steps off the plane in Washington, the entire world will be watching to see how a sick king handles a hostile son, a charged political moment, and the most important diplomatic visit of his reign. There is one chapter left to write, and it is being written in real time, in the next 48 hours. Stay close, pay attention, because the next move in this royal endgame, the move that decides everything, is coming faster than anyone is prepared for. The king has chosen his side. The institution has chosen its future. And the Sussexes, exiled, isolated, financially squeezed, professionally stranded, are being left to face the consequences of every choice they have made for the past 6 years. Alone. Without the protection of the crown, without the indulgence of a forgiving father, without the handrails of an institution that no longer trusts them, and without, finally, the audience that once made them invincible, the story is ending, the fall is in motion, and the truth, that cold, patient, undeniable thing, is finally walking into the room.